Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Welcome back to Houselights in our newest addition that we're adding on to this great mansion of a podcast, the House of Besson, Luc Besson in specific, as we examine his works of the 1990s. And this week we will be looking at Léon, the Professional, or The Professional if you just saw it in movie theaters back in the 90s. And I am one of the hosts here on Houselights. I am John Mills, and I am pleased as punch to be welcoming my two co-hosts, cleaner trainee Darren Moser. Are you ready to explore this film that has one of the best, worst taglines from a review that I've ever encountered in film history?
Oh, that's quite a setup.
Oh, it is a setup. It's a line from a commercial for this film that myself and the infamous Joey have made fun of for literally the time since this film came out. So decades at this point, where there was an ad for The Professional, and it had the shot of the one Rasta cop firing the gun, and you're tracking with the gun as it's firing everywhere. And the line was, "Makes speed look like a drive to grandma's house."
Ooh,
and
that's a bold claim.
It was one of those things where, like, you can't even process it. You're like, how did this? Like, it sounds like something AI would write nowadays, because you're like, these are like English words, and the sentence sort of, there's structure there, but I don't know how you arrived at that thought. Go on, please. And so, yes, that is the line from a review for The Professional that I have held on to with Joey for 30 years at this point, and we'll never let it go. In fact, us talking about The Professional means I will go, and when I see Joey in the coming days, I will say to him, "Hey, remember that ad?" But Darren, I'm going to ask you, you were a precocious youth, but I doubt you saw The Professional in the movie theaters in 1994 as I did. But when was the first time you encountered this? Which cut of the film was it? Is now your first viewing? Take the audience through that.
Well, I didn't even know there were other cuts until you just said something 2 seconds ago. So
surprise.
I guess theatrical. This was a college movie. This was living with a bunch of college students, and we were all film majors. And so someone had a copy of Léon. Of course they did. And so caught it, one of our highbrow movie nights of, oh yes, let us watch Léon and deconstruct the, I don't know, maybe we couldn't enjoy things, but it was still fun. So yeah, that was, many decades ago still at this point, but not quite so far back as 1994. Apparently trying to jump on the speed bandwagon, well, so to speak.
94, I think, was the year that Speed came out, or was it was around then, right?
Speed was 90 or was summer, and this was a September release.
Yeah, so I think that's why it was there. I mean, I will go ahead and say, this being the September release in 1994, this was actually a first date movie with myself and my first serious college girlfriend, Alicia. All cards on the table. When a 4K release of this came out, I did purchase it, because regardless of anything else or anybody else thinks of whatever, blah, 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 like, I think that this is an important film for the fact that it, from my perspective, it had an impact on the action genre. I don't think it had an outsized Die Hard level impact, but I definitely think that it had an impact on how people approached staging, gunfight scenes, and how they approached characters like The Professional. I think this definitely had sort of like it wasn't a shockwave like Predator, but there's a ripple effect that I think you can see emanating out from this film. Darren, do you see that? Do you see influence from this film?
Yeah, just thinking about it, one of the things I like about this movie is that he's not superhuman. Like, he's a professional. Like, he has skills, but he's constantly training. He's constantly honing and working out. So the fact that he is I'm never pushed out of suspension of disbelief. I always believe he can accomplish anything that we see him do. And a little bit of it's luck. honestly, in him taking people out, but he gets shot, he gets hurt. He's not infallible. So I would say the way it's shot, coupled with, I don't want to say every man,
right.
cleaner, but the fact that it's so grounded, I totally buy that this could be a person, doing their thing. And it makes me enjoy the story more. It makes me feel the tension. Like, gosh, when he's, I mean, I know I'm jumping to like the very end, but when he's wearing the mask and going down the stairs and you see the division of troops that are you're like, oh my gosh, like there was no way out. Like you were so screwed. It was not even funny.
Well, I like the fact that you mentioned the ending because it has probably one of the most iconic Gary Oldman moments of all time. Where they say, bring everyone, and he turns out and just goes, everyone. Like that's an indelible sort of scene. So I think that's a good opening to say, Tristan, Oldman is post-Dracula at this point. He's post-True Romance. He's sort of established himself for very eccentric characters. He mentions Beethoven. He talks about Beethoven. He's imagining Beethoven, but the score sounds nothing like Beethoven in that moment. Darren, do you think that's what's taking Tristan out of it? Did it work for you? Did it not work for you?
Yeah, I'm kind of neither here nor there. I think they were trying something, or like you said, he kind of threw something at the wall. It didn't necessarily stick. I think if this movie was made slightly later, it would have maybe changed the character a little bit, but I could totally see him being a guy who has like a beat up Walkman and he puts it on and we cut to just the music, like no nat sound, or even he goes into his head and then the music swells and we can't hear the music, but he hears it internally, something to make the connection. But it was one of those things where a character, you're trying to give him a quirk and it didn't quite, like the drugs was enough when the way he took it and put his head back, that was enough. I'm like, oh, okay, I know exactly how to read this guy. And then they added the music or the love of it. And it didn't really do anything for me.
See, a lot of people get a kick out of it because he later, very shortly after this, went on to play Beethoven in Immortal Beloved. So everybody was like, oh, that's cute. For me, it's one of those things where I actually enjoy it because I think that the camera work, the staging of that infiltration of the apartment, I really enjoy it because it's really, I think, well paced, well plotted. And by plotted, I mean in terms of like the steps he takes and the steps he goes. Like I plotted my course, not necessarily as like, oh, the plotting on that as a screenwriter was, that's what I mean. And I never lose my sense of place in the apartment or anything like that. I think that where I've always enjoyed it is that, no, I can't hear what's in his head. And as a result, I think it does effectively make him, I think it does work because he's talking about this thing and the film is not making the effort to make me understand the thing. It's making it very clear nobody understands what's going on inside this guy's head. That's what I've always walked away with on it. But I think it's definitely, if you were to take another director and put it in, Darren, I think you're right. I think you're going to be hearing just Beethoven through that scene with not even the shotgun noises going off and stuff like that. So, but we have this setup. We have all of this. We meet Matilda, a very young Natalie Portman. She's a traumatized kid. She's been abused by her family to the point where she's pretending to be dead to her school so that she can, she's coming from a very broken place. And I agree with you. It is complicated because she doesn't really want to give it up, but Léon doesn't want to turn her out onto the street. And so he's caught, I think you very much get the vibe where he's like, well, okay, she'll grow out of this is sort of the vibe that I get through it, where it's like, I care about her. I want her to be okay, but I don't get a sense of and I'm going to marry her tomorrow. And yeah. I think that to the point where, and Darren, feel free to disagree, obviously, but at the end when he's telling her, I love you, I want to go off, I want to do that. He's saying what she needs to hear so that she'll let go and leave him.
Yeah.
So
and
that
that
he
part's
can do his
very
thing.
clear that's why he's saying that. No, I agree with you both, I think, but I give it a positive notch as far as the story is making me feel. It's making me feel uncomfortable, but it is creating this character and this dynamic that is making me feel something. And that, I think, is, I give credit to that when movies are able to do that with their characters. And I don't have a source to cite, but I had read that that Jean Reno chose to play Léon slightly dim as a way to also kind of put a bit of a gap between, like, oh, he would never go towards this because he doesn't have the ability to make kind of that type of emotional connect or try to pursue her at all, like another barrier in the character. That might be true. I have to research it again, but I think but at its core, it is uncomfortable. It is, inappropriate as far as, you're still putting a human being through this in making a movie. Like, that is still happening to Natalie Portman in that regard, and the side effects of that. But do I feel like, oh, I could never watch this movie again because of that aspect? No, I don't think it crosses that line.
The movie's made, it makes enough money to be a hit, and a modest hit, but a hit nonetheless. And there was actually a sequel that was supposed to be filmed called Matilda, but because of a falling out with the studio, like, they held on to the rights and they wouldn't let Besson make it. Darren, you said there's still time. There's still time. But Darren, you mentioned nothing exists in such a way that you would never revisit this film. Do you think that there is enough material? Would you be interested in seeing a continuation of Matilda's story? Or do you think it ends at the right spot?
On thinking about it for 2 seconds, I think it ends at the right spot. I think it really does. It is also very much a product of the 90s, the vibe, the look, the tone of filmmaking. I don't know what there is to gain for putting this movie in 2025 with an older Matilda. Finding, like, Batman and Robin finding another, ward to bring in. Like, I don't know. I would I maybe watch it if it got pulled together? Maybe, but honestly, Léon is the draw. That character we saw transfer over from Nikita. Like, I don't know if Matilda being Léon older, I don't know if that puzzle works.
Danny Aiello makes an appearance here. His role is not substantial, but it's impactful. Darren, how did you feel about that character? Do you think that he was utilized to his full extent? Do you wish there was more of him to give more history?
No, I give a hat tip to Besson for sure that he knows how much to use a character. Like, the fact that he's in it just enough, but he feels like a full-fledged character. I totally buy. These guys have known each other for decades, but his box is small. It's like, oh, he's the guy who calls the hits and he holds his money. Like, that's all I need to know about him. I'm left wanting more, not in a compulsive way of like, oh, I wish there was more, but I'm not. I'm left wanted more in an interesting fashion. It's like, okay, this is an interesting guy. This is an interesting world, but I see how he fits into the story. So yeah, I think he had great parts, especially, we keep talking about the end, but I love that there's that scene where Matilda goes to him and it's not, she walks away from the building and goes to the school. It's instead, she has one more try of, like, as a child, she feels the most childlike, where she's like, oh, I want to be a cleaner. And he's just like, no, and shuts her down. It is like, that is not, for you. And then she goes to the school and it fades out. But yeah, it makes me think of some roles from Pulp Fiction, or actually, sorry, not Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs. Some of the smaller characters that we barely know, but you totally buy they're a part of this world. So very well done.
And the thing is, you corrected and you said Reservoir Dogs, but Pulp Fiction did come out this year. So The Professional, Léon, whichever version of the title you want to use, it costs $16 million. It makes 45-ish. That's a good return on investment, solid return on investment. But Tristan, do you think that the Professional is one of those movies that has been relegated to the need for somebody to evangelize it, for somebody to take it forward to someone? Is it semi-forgotten because of the year that it came out?
In a way, it's all speculation, but I almost feel like the way you can tell it's not mainstream in that way is the title. Like if this was really mainstream, you could just call it Léon and everyone would know what you're talking about. But you almost have to add The Professional for your brain to click and be like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
But see, that's what's crazy is when I talk about this, the international cut was not a thing in the States for a time. When it was released, I was all over it because I owned a copy of the theatrical because I love the theatrical. And to this day, when I talk about it, I don't say Léon, I say The Professional because that's the first title that it got known by in the States. And I think that further complicates it is that sort of like title confusion sort of thing. It's like you know what?
I'm thinking of Live, Die, Repeat and Edge of Tomorrow and oh gosh.
Or any of the titles for, Apocalypse Now. Do you say, oh, did you see Apocalypse Now, the final cut? Or do you just talk about Apocalypse Now? Or do you just, there's so many movies where it's like, that extra little bit of title confusion.
Or what's it now? Thunderbolts asterisk? I don't know.
Oh, no, it was always Thunderbolts asterisk. And now it's Thunderbolts asterisk, The New Avengers, which spoils a line. Like when somebody explained it to me and I was like, oh, so do I need to see the movie? And they're like, nah, you're good. I was like, all right, cool. I'm not going to bother then. I'll be totally lost when Avengers Doomsday comes out.
John Harrison all over again. It's just
yeah. Why? Why do you do this, Darren? Why do you do this?
I'm right.
Just steered it right into a brick wall.
I could guarantee that is not true. I'm going to emphatically state. Well, actually, it is true. No, I am Con. Yeah.
For goodness sake. Now, I think this is a remarkably well constructed film. When I was doing the rewatch, we all have busier lives now. You're at home, you get interrupted, that sort of thing. But before I knew it, I was 45 minutes into it. Like it just flew by. And every time I've ever watched this, it hits that point where I'm like, wait, how long have I been watching this? And then I'm like an hour in, I'm like, that's ridiculous. I didn't know. That doesn't make sense. Tristan, do you feel that sense of pace? Do you think that this is a director who's communicating better with his editor than he was in La Femme Nikita? Or do you think that this is on par with?
I've heard it said many times about people in art where you start off where you know what is good, like your sense of palette is good, but your skill isn't there yet. So it's like, what makes a good shot and a good movie, but executing is what takes time and practice and effort. And I see that where it's not that he was bad and didn't know what he wanted, didn't have a vision in La Femme Nikita, but between that and this, it's now showing up on screen even more. It's his first English language film, full in America. So yeah, I'm just falling in love with Besson all over again because I love how directed his shots are, meaning there's shots like looking down, looking up, like everything is placed so well. We're looking up at Léon out his window when they're loading the missile in the shield to fire it. Like, and wait till we get to Fifth Element, guys. It's going to be like, I'm salivating on that. That's like the whole movie is that. But this, that is becoming, I said it last week, it is a mark of Besson, that he is a very intentional director. You know, when Matilda like sneaks back to her house and trips up on something, looks down, and she's standing in the outline of her dead brother. It's like, oh my gosh, like that's a shot that sticks with you.
Yeah. I think that this is visually an evolution for Besson. And in the very beginning, there's one shot, it might seem weird. I mean, very obviously the shot of Natalie Portman at the door crying, trying to buzz her way in to Leon's apartment is real. Like the camera is exactly as far away from her as it should be. It's not right up in her grill. It's not too far away. It's that you sense the discomfort and you're really close without being too close. But one of the shots that I love, and this may sound silly, is in that same scene when we see the thug standing outside the apartment, and it's the shot of the hallway with him in it looking over at Leon's door. Like, I love that because I feel like you get a sense of somebody who knew how to use the bend of the lens and the placement of the camera in the right way to make it feel disorienting in this very small hallway. It feels like a very large picture of a very small space. And I think that's something where, he worked with Arbogast again, his cinematographer of choice, I guess. And I think that's really one of the reasons this film does take off, Tristan, like you said, with like the film fans, the cult fans and stuff like that. It's like, it is beautiful in a lot of moments. But for some, the action sequences wear a little thin, including the ending. I don't necessarily see it the same way, but Tristan, are there any specific moments where things wear thin, where the edit runs too long, or where they should have? I'm presuming you watched the international cut. You watch. Yeah, that's right, Darren.
Okay, then that's what I watched too. I just didn't realize it. What's the main difference?
There are a couple of extra moments, mainly in the latter part of the movie, but also the title card would have said Leon at the beginning of the international cut. Right.
Yes, that was definitely the cut I saw. So
there you go. But, are there, since you saw the international cut, do you think that they made the right call back in 94 with trimming certain scenes to make the film shorter? Or do you think that this is no fat on here?
I think when in the middle, when they're Leon's trying to be convinced, do I train her? Do I not? There's the love aspect. Like, whenever you're trying to convince your characters of something that is not their nature, it's going to kind of drag a little because you're like, oh, I want this to be resolved, but also you can't have it happen in 2 seconds. Like, time has to pass or it doesn't feel, feels hollow. I will say in the end, I didn't quite get the scene where she goes to the police department. Like, I understand the motivation of it, but once she gets caught, it kind of feels like that thread just dies. It's like, okay, I'm going to go, I'm going to blow him away. And then she gets caught and like, yeah, he comes in and swoops. And I get narratively how it possesses, but it's almost like a false start. Like, okay, here we're going to the ending. Oh, just kidding. Now we're not. Okay, now here we are. Now he's coming in and shooting everyone. And I'm not saying it's bad. It's just, it kind of caught me off guard where I thought we were on the train to the ending, but we had one more stop to hop over till it actually, and then, it all crescendos with the siege, the everyone. So
yeah, I get what you're saying. I also think, we keep coming back to the siege at the end, and I'm sure we'll talk about it one more time before we go. But I think that Gary Oldman also in 2 Luc Besson movies in a row has 2 of the best death scenes of the 1990s, and I just think it's like it almost becomes a gag where it's like, man, like now every time I see a Gary Oldman movie, I'm like, oh, is he going to have a good death scene in this one? Oh, it's a drama. Okay, never mind. In terms of the complexity of stuff, though, what I really key in what you were saying, Tristan, where you were like, this isn't an action movie. It's like it's got the veneer of an action movie put over it. So it's almost like, I think maybe the reason it gets lost through time is people don't know what box to put it in. And I think what speaks to that is one of my favorite scenes in the film, and it's always been one of my favorite scenes in the film, is the reason he has left the apartment complex the morning of the killing is to go see an old movie in the movie theater. And I think that Renaud does such a beautiful, beautiful job of, we've seen him already be a hitman and like an incredible hitman. But then he has this childlike wonder at an old film. He's so alone that he's sitting there. The only other person in the theater is asleep. And he's got this sense of wonder. He's like looking around. Is there anybody else I can share this with? And he's completely alone. Like, I think it's such a heartbreaking scene. It's so effective for establishing the character and what's, Darren, you were talking about the found family thing, that he just wants to belong in some way. And so, like, I think that's such a key moment to make you feel sympathetic for somebody who murders people for a living. Oh, they're bad people. Yeah, it's still murder. He's not helping society necessarily. Like, he's not an altruist or anything like that. But coming back to the music, I already cited in how the Beethoven murder, the raid on the apartment, we don't hear Beethoven. Tristan, what did you think of Éric Serra's score? Darren, did you feel this was the prelude, the overture of GoldenEye?
It maybe a little. I think I definitely felt it more in La Femme de Qui. I mean, you even mentioned it last week, but no, I think the score was good overall. There was, again, nothing. It built the tension where it needed to, and I think it was never overpowering. Yeah, there's a few parts, like we had just said, where it could have maybe used a little more connection with the characters, but overall, this has really been interesting as we're going through Besson because of all of the pairings with the editing and the music, and like we're kind of watching a team go through the 90s rather than just a director, which is rare for us.
Darren, as we're closing out here, in terms of the sense of set decoration and production design, do you think that this movie benefits from being in New York? Do you think that adds to the character of the film? Do you think that the production design leans into that, and so it makes the film maybe more accessible than Nikita was? Or do you think that the production design is simply more money and more experience knows what to do with what they have around them?
Well, it's interesting you say that because, I'm reading that the majority of the interior footage was shot in France, which I would have not even had a clue. Like, it was so seamless between the exterior and the interior shots that I thought the whole thing was done in New York for sure. So I don't know exactly what percent or what shots, but yeah, the only thing maybe that kind of pulled me out a little bit is the whole, you have this really specialized hitman that is killing a lot of people. Like, a lot of people are dying within a relatively short amount of time. And yes, all the cops come at the end, but they come at the end because of the corrupt cop that knew about it. Like, I when they're, just on a rooftop shooting a guy with a paintball gun, for practice, I'm like, I feel like that would have more of an impact in society than like nobody cares, I guess. So that drew me out a little bit. As far as this is in New York, like, yeah, I can kind of see getting lost in the crowd, but my goodness, like they just disappear.
I will say that New York has that vibe about it though. So, I mean, it's like whether it's true or not, I would lean toward it's kind of true, because I don't know how they solve anything in New York City, because that place is just, a honeycomb of places to hide. So we've gone through production, design, the set decoration. We've gone through music, we've gone through editing, we've gone through cinematography and performance and legacy and all of those sorts of things in a film where Jean Reno basically introduces himself to American audiences to the level where he shows up in Mission Impossible and then becomes a mainstay in American film afterward. Phenomenal performance. Great calling card. Gary Oldman riding the high of the freedom to play as many wacky characters as he wants to and lean into it and having a blast with it. And then Natalie Portman holding her own as a child against these two actors who have been doing it for decades. What an incredible statement to the gift that she has to do what she's done for a living. And if anything, that's why when she was announced to play, she's going to play Queen Amidala in The Phantom Menace, I was one of those people that was like, oh, wow, really? Because I knew her from The Professional and I was excited because I was like, wow, she can really act. I'm really looking forward to seeing that. It's entirely possible that nostalgia plays into it, but I've loved this film since the first time I watched it. I've loved both cuts. I don't care which cut I'm watching. I'll watch theatrical sometimes. I'll watch the for a time we called it the European cut. It's also been the director's cut. It's also like whatever you want to call the cut. I've watched both versions. And I give both a 5. I adore this film. I love it. I think it's wonderful. So it's a solid 5 for me too. Darren, that brings us to you, man. I gave it 5. Why did you give it a 1?
No, geez, don't do that to me. No, I give this a solid 4. I really enjoyed this movie. Will I rewatch the entire thing in one sitting? I too found myself captivated by it. Like I was like, oh man, it's almost over. But I'll probably pop in and out being like, oh, hey, I really want to watch that end sequence, or, oh, I want to watch like the training montage, like, and just savor those parts. But yeah, I mean, like I said before, this movie makes you feel for these characters, makes you uncomfortable a bit, makes you kind of ask, like, how is this person living in this world of, being a hitman? And it feels very small. It feels like a very tiny world, like almost a city block, like no bigger, that he's, taking out these people. And I love all sorts of things. I love the moment where Matilda discovers, you discover that they're cops. They're like, oh, the cops are coming. And they're like, oh no. And then they're like, hey, Bob, how's it going? Like, what do we got here? And you're like, oh, they're all dirty cops. Well, that's a wrinkle in, the plan, just all of that put together. So yeah, definitely a 4, a obvious, a cult classic, enjoyed watching as a film student but enjoyed even more so watching it now as part of this Houselights, because seeing it from Nikita and going into, the Fifth Element, like I get a better sense of it, seeing it in that order versus before it was always just off the shelf.
Well, there we go. That is our second chapter, our second room in the House of Besson, and tease us up to go further into the 90s. Darren, what are we going to be watching next?
Next week, we're staying with Luc Besson with The Fifth Element. It's love here on Houselights.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.